Everyone, Mark here with the Government Vault. Today we have one of my favorites, and that's Senator Josh Hawley, and he is interviewing Christopher Wray for the director of the FBI. And he's asking about the Chinese influence, particularly in universities, what they call Confucius Institutes, where the Chinese pay, and it's supposed to be for um, Chinese culture, Chinese language purposes, and there may be some other things around that. So this is a pretty cool video. Let's check this out.
Let me shift gears and talk to you a little bit about China, Chinese espionage that others of my colleagues have asked about. And I want to ask you more specifically about Confucius Institutes, which you touched on just briefly with Senator Kennedy a moment ago. 18 months ago, when you were before the Senate Intelligence Committee, you said you were concerned about Chinese espionage at universities. It's a quote from you. You're concerned about the use of non-traditional collectors, especially in the academic setting, whether it's professors, scientists, students. You say you see it in almost every field office that the FBI has around the country, and you went on to say the Chinese are exploiting the very open research and development environment that we have, and you've reiterated those concerns here this morning. Do you continue to consider Chinese espionage activities focused on research and IP theft to be a serious threat? I mean, you see that as continuing to be an ongoing threat?
Very much so. I think an awful lot of the most sensitive research that is conducted across either military or dual-use technologies, but also in areas like healthcare and things like that, are conducted in our leading academic institutions, and there is a fairly significant pattern of espionage that is occurring in that arena. So that's something we are concerned about.
And that's really interesting. The Chinese are trying to infiltrate America and get information, and Lord knows that they're taking technology back to China that they haven't developed, and it's a very significant problem.
Let me just ask you now about specifically about Confucius Institutes and why you've expressed concern about them and why you answered Senator Kennedy as you did. Why should we be concerned? Why should the American public, why should, for that matter, American university college presidents be concerned about Confucius Institutes on their campuses? Can you just sort of spell that out for us?
So my answer that I just gave was more broadly about the academic sector. The Confucius Institutes are a source of concern, but we view those more as part of China's soft power strategy and influence. In other words, those offer a platform to disseminate Chinese government or Chinese Communist Party propaganda, to encourage censorship, to restrict academic freedom, et cetera. So it is an area of concern, and we are actually encouraged, somewhat similar to the answer I was giving to Senator Kennedy, by the growing number of universities in this country over the last few years that have taken steps to restrict and curtail Confucius Institutes on their campuses. I will say we're even more concerned, though, about what I would consider more traditional efforts at either cyber intrusion or espionage, both in the research facilities themselves and in the private sector, as I've testified about a little bit here today.
Still a bit of a problem. The Chinese have infiltrated many of these universities, and they're getting information out of them, and they're influencing, the liberal left is certainly influencing people on those university campuses. The Chinese see that, and they're taking advantage of it.
Just on the Confucius Institutes again for 1 minute, what would you say to a university president who's considering partnering and allowing with the Confucius Institute and allowing an institute on her campus? I mean, what considerations do you think that university president ought to have in mind?
I would think a university president ought to do an awful lot of homework, and we'd be happy to have the local field office sit down with them to talk to them about what we know that can be shared about Confucius Institutes so that they can make a thoughtful decision themselves about whether it's something they really want to have on their campus.
On the more, to use your phrase, more traditional forms of espionage that the Chinese government and military is employing, do you think it's time for new legislation to help secure and protect our universities from that kind of espionage? Are there tools that we could give you that you think would be beneficial?
Well, I don't know that I have specific legislative proposal, but I do think that the level of awareness that is starting to increase in this country, including in the academic sector, and of course, you and your colleagues have played an important role in helping raise awareness, I think is positive, and I think it's time for a national conversation about how we can all play our respective roles in helping to protect the country.
I've introduced legislation that would require students, graduate students, or researchers from China and several other countries that we know engage in espionage activity to get an additional screening by the Department of Homeland Security if they are applying to work on a research project that involves either classified information or high security, high risk security information as designated by the department. Now, I'm not asking you to endorse that, but are those kinds of additional screenings, background checks for folks who come from countries who have a history of espionage and who want to work on projects that are sensitive or classified, is that the kind of thing that you think we should be concerned about, looking for ways to protect?
That probably Eric Swalwell and Yum Yum feel that this would be very crucial and important because Lord knows he got caught with his pants down.
Well, as you say, I haven't reviewed the specific legislation, but I think as a general rule, both making sure that universities, especially some of our universities that are leaders in science and technology, really know who it is they're bringing in. So that's the who on the one hand. And then on the what, on the other side, what information are they actually giving those people the ability to work on? Not all information and research is created alike, just like not all visitors are created alike in terms of.
Of course, we're still funding that Wuhan lab where COVID allegedly came from, but we're still sending money there. We sent it once, we are still sending money, so they're finding other ways to get to the end, to their end game.
The potential threat that it presents to our national security.
Thank you.
Well, that's it today. You might want to check out the next video we have, which is Matt Gates talking to Christopher Wray just recently and really hammered him about Hunter and Joe Biden. So check it out. Please like and subscribe, and I'd love to see if you have any comments. Thank you.